Welcome. Tonight we step into a story where silk curtains billow softly in the evening air and chandeliers cast golden pools of light across marble floors. You find yourself in a mansion so vast that footsteps echo long after they've faded. The wealth here is undeniable, gleaming, shimmering, almost suffocating in its perfection. But wealth can be a lonely kind of prison, and behind those polished walls lives a man whose heart is quieter than the ticking clock that marks his solitude. You already know where this is heading. A love story, wrapped in whispers, secrets, and the kind of tenderness that surprises even the strongest. And yet, you probably won't survive this one, not because it's dangerous, but because somewhere between the velvet night and the slow unraveling of hearts, your eyelids might grow heavy. That's fine. That's the whole point. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from, too. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the man's world, a figure tall, sharp-suited, always precise in his ways. He lives alone in this great expanse of stone and glass, wandering from dining hall to library to garden, as though each room belongs to someone else. He's rich enough to never lift a finger, yet it's his hands that pour the coffee late at night, his hands that pull shut the heavy curtains, his hands that reach toward the silence and return empty. Tonight feels the same as every other. He dines alone at a table built for 20. A single candle burns at the far end, more for company than for light. He stares at the flame and wonders, not for the first time, what life would feel like if someone cared about him, not his money. He remembers the time he caught himself smiling at a stray cat that padded through the garden, the way it tapped its paw against the fountain edge, as though testing if the water was safe. He envied the simplicity of its life, envied that it could wander freely without questions of loyalty or motive. Sometimes he thinks even animals understand companionship better than humans in his world, and yet he holds on to a strange longing. The kind of longing you don't speak of out loud. That fantasy where you open your front door and find not another transaction, not another deal, but someone whose presence feels like home. You can't buy that. You can't command it. It arrives like weather, unexpected, changing everything in an instant. As he leans back in his chair, he runs a hand over the polished wood of the table. His mind drifts. What would it feel like to sit here and laugh with someone? To argue playfully about whether the soup is too salty? To watch another pair of hands cup the wine glass instead of only his own? For now, the house answers only with its creaks and sighs. Somewhere far down the corridor, a clock chimes softly, reminding him that time moves whether or not his life does. But deep within that stillness, change is already weaving its way toward him. And tonight, as he lets out a quiet breath, he feels just barely that the silence has shifted, as though the world is holding its breath, waiting to introduce him to someone who will change everything. You can sense it too, can't you? That faint thrill in your chest, like turning the page of a book and knowing the next line will matter. The night stretches long, and you wander further into the mansion's quiet heart, where portraits of ancestors stare from gilded frames, and corridors carry the weight of memories that aren't even yours. You trace the velvet lining of the curtains, feel the chill of marble beneath your bare feet, and the emptiness settles heavy again. For all the riches surrounding him, the man at the center of this story, you see clearly how wealth can create walls thicker than stone. He has everything except the one thing that matters when the night grows deep: companionship, the kind that makes silence feel warm instead of cold. He sleeps in a bed too large for one. He dines at a table too wide for conversation. Even laughter sounds strange here, as though the walls have forgotten how to echo joy. The staff is polite, efficient, distant. They slip in and out like shadows, their loyalty tied to paychecks, not affection. No one lingers, no one stays. In moments like these, he wanders to the grand piano in the music room. He isn't a master pianist, but his fingers stumble through melodies that remind him of childhood. Soft tunes his mother once hummed when she thought no one was listening. The notes float into the air, and he lets them fill the void, if only for a while. And you, listening now, know that ache, don't you? The ache of longing when everything looks perfect from the outside, yet inside, it feels unfinished. It is the same kind of yearning you've felt on nights when the world sleeps, but your heart stays awake, craving a voice to share the quiet with. Sometimes he catches himself talking to objects. A comment to the crystal glass when the wine tastes too sharp. A murmur to the paintings when a memory stings too vividly. Even a whisper to the moonlight spilling across his balcony, as though the night sky itself might answer. And though he wouldn't admit it aloud, he still keeps a little hope hidden away. Hope that one day someone will step into this mansion and treat it not as a fortress, but as a home. Someone who won't be impressed by chandeliers or fine art, but by the person sitting alone at the end of the table. He pours himself another glass of water, watching the way it catches the light. It's a small ritual, grounding in its simplicity. Wealth has filled his life with extravagance, but he still clings to ordinary gestures, a steaming mug of tea, the crinkle of paper when opening a book, the sound of rain against the window. These are the things that make him feel human. Tonight, though, there's something stirring in him, a quiet restlessness he can't name. The kind of feeling that makes you leave the lamp on longer than usual, or glance toward the door as though expecting someone. He takes a seat in the library, pulling down a leather-bound novel he's read a dozen times. He flips the pages absently, not really seeing the words. Instead, his mind paints invisible portraits of someone who could sit beside him. He wonders, would she laugh at his serious expressions? Would she tap her fingers against her mug the way his mother once did? Would she notice the little creases at the corners of his eyes when he tries not to smile? Loneliness, after all, sharpens imagination, and imagination is both a blessing and a curse. The fire in the library crackles softly. He lets the sound carry him closer to sleep, but it never quite reaches him. He stares at the ceiling beams, feels the weight of his own heartbeat, and realizes again how empty life feels without another heartbeat nearby. And somewhere, just beyond the reach of his awareness, fate is already setting the stage. His longing, his silence, his carefully hidden hope, it's all drawing someone toward him. Someone who will step across that threshold and alter the rhythm of his life forever. But for now, he is simply a man in a mansion, rich in everything except the one thing he craves most. And you can almost feel his longing brushing against your own, can't you? That reminder that even the grandest life is small without love. The days slide forward like pages turned by an unseen hand, each one looking much the same as the last, until the afternoon you wander into the city, searching for nothing in particular. The streets buzz with movement, vendors calling, children laughing, carriages rolling, the hum of life too large to fit inside the mansion's silent walls. For once, you step out without purpose, simply letting your shoes find their own direction. And it's there, in the swirl of ordinary life, that you see her. She isn't dazzling in the way you'd expect. No jewels, no stage lights, no loud declaration of presence. Instead, she's standing at the edge of a small cafe, her hands folded delicately in front of her, watching people pass as though studying the rhythm of the world. Her hair catches the sunlight for just a second, and you feel something in your chest shift. You hesitate. After all, you've grown used to measured conversations, introductions steeped in formality, people approaching you with calculation in their eyes, but she doesn't seem to notice you at all. She simply tilts her head as if listening to the faint music spilling from the cafe door, as if the song is a secret only she understands. You find yourself stepping closer, not because you plan to, but because your curiosity pulls you forward. And when your gaze meets hers for the first time, you notice something that unsettles you. Her eyes aren't just beautiful, they're strangely clear, as though they hold too much focus, too much attention. Like she's seeing not only you, but everything about you. You offer a polite greeting, your voice steadier than you feel. She blinks once, then answers softly, her tone carrying the faintest pause between words. It's almost as though she's choosing them carefully, sculpting each syllable before it leaves her lips. And yet, there's warmth, real warmth, the kind that seeps past your careful defenses. You share a few casual words, something about the weather, the cafe, the way the sunlight warms the cobblestones. It is a remarkable conversation, yet you catch yourself smiling at her presence. Smiling in a way you haven't in a very long time. The barista inside calls her name, and you note how gently she thanks them, how she carries her tea with both hands, as though afraid of spilling even a drop. It's such a small detail, but it lingers in your mind. You're used to people who toss their wealth around casually, who treat objects as disposable. But she cradles a simple paper cup as though it matters. You fall into step beside her without quite realizing it. She doesn't protest. Instead, she asks you something simple, almost childlike. Do you like this street? The question makes you pause. No one asks you things like that. People usually want to know about deals, investments, connections. And here she is, asking about cobblestones and shop windows, as though the world itself deserves attention. You nod, and the two of you continue walking, your conversation flowing with an ease that surprises you. Each word she offers feels deliberate, but not forced. You listen, curious about the way she describes the scent of roasted coffee beans, or how she notices the rhythm of footsteps around her. It feels fresh, different, like seeing the city through new eyes. And in this simple encounter, something stirs in you. Not a grand declaration, not love at first sight, but a quiet shift. The kind that whispers, here, maybe, is someone who could soften the silence of your nights. As the sun lowers and the shadows stretch longer, you realize you don't want this conversation to end. Not yet. Not when it feels like the first real one you've had in years. And so, with a heartbeat you can almost hear in your ears, you ask her if she would join you for coffee again sometime. She tilts her head, studies you with those unnervingly clear eyes, and then she smiles. And in that moment, the world seems to pause, as though something new has begun. You carry that smile with you long after she's gone, the way her lips curve gently as though they were holding back a secret, the way her eyes seem to study you and soften all at once. It lingers, replaying in your mind as you walk back toward the mansion, footsteps lighter than usual, air sharper with the scent of evening rain beginning to fall. That night, the house doesn't feel quite as oppressive. The chandeliers still glitter coldly, the marble still gleams, but there's a memory alive inside you now. When you close your eyes, you don't hear only the echo of your own heartbeat. You hear the faint rhythm of her voice, that soft cadence that felt oddly careful and yet sincere. The next morning, you find yourself restless. You wander through the rooms aimlessly, pausing by windows, staring at the garden, letting your mind circle back to her face. It's strange how quickly a single moment can take root. You wonder if you imagine the spark, if maybe it was nothing at all, but your heart insists otherwise. And then it happens again. You see her. Not by chance this time, at least. It doesn't feel that way. She's at the same cafe, waiting with her tea, that same gentle smile brushing across her features when her eyes meet yours. Almost as though she expected you. Almost as though you were meant to return. You sit together, a table between you, the world bustling around. She stirs her tea slowly, not out of need but habit, the spoon circling with a rhythmic clink against porcelain. It's a tiny gesture, yet you find it endearing. A quirk that belongs only to her. The conversation starts easily. Talk of the weather, the way the rain has washed the streets clean. Then she asks about you, but not in the usual way. She doesn't ask about wealth or business or titles. Instead, she asks, "Do you like to read?" It's such a simple question, and yet it disarms you. You laugh softly, admitting that books are your quiet refuge, and she leans in, eyes glinting, as though the answer pleases her more than it should. She shares in that deliberate way of hers that she likes stories too, not just the grand ones, but the small, quiet tales hidden in corners, the kind people forget to notice. As you listen, you feel something you haven't in years, ease. The way her words flow, the way she tilts her head when she's curious, the way her fingers tap against the rim of her cup. It all weaves into a sense of comfort, as though the silence you've carried has finally found a companion. You walk together after coffee, the streets damp from rain, your shoulders brushing once by accident, and the warmth of that touch lingers. She doesn't pull away. Neither do you, and yet there's something in her eyes, a glimmer you can't quite define. Not cold, not unkind, but precise. As if she's measuring not just your words, but the spaces between them. You notice it briefly, tuck it away, and decide not to dwell. After all, hearts rarely demand logic when they're just beginning to be in sync with someone else. That evening, when you return to the mansion, you find yourself humming. You catch the staff looking at you curiously, perhaps wondering what has shifted in your expression. But you don't explain. Some things feel too delicate, too new to share. Instead, you pour yourself a glass of water, as always, but tonight it tastes sweeter. You sit in the library with a book you've read 100 times, but now the words seem brighter. You even laugh softly at a passage you'd skimmed before, because you can imagine reading it aloud to her, watching the way her face might light up in response. And as you lean back in your chair, you realize you are smiling again. Not the practiced smile you wear at social gatherings, but the unguarded one that comes when life surprises you. It's a small thing, yes, just a girl, a cafe, a smile. But you already feel it. Something inside you has shifted. Something that was waiting for her, specifically her. You still wonder, though. Was it luck? Was it fate? Or was it something else entirely? The next time you meet, it feels less like chance and more like a rhythm forming between you, a thread pulling you both toward the same place. You arrive at the cafe almost without thinking, and there she is again, seated by the window this time, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup, her eyes following the world outside with quiet fascination. You take the seat across from her, and the air hums with that gentle awkwardness that comes before words. She breaks it first, her lips curling into that familiar soft smile. "I thought you might come," she says, voice even and deliberate. You raise an eyebrow, teasing lightly. "Did you?" And she nods, as though it were the most natural thing in the world to anticipate your presence. The conversation drifts easily into small things, how the sunlight warms the cobblestones, how the cafe owner always plays the same record in the mornings, how she likes her tea with just a hint of honey. You notice how she taps the side of her mug when she speaks, like a punctuation mark. Tap, pause, smile. It becomes her rhythm, and you find yourself waiting for it, listening for it. At one point, you laugh, genuinely unrestrained. She had made a small observation about how people tend to walk faster when they carry umbrellas, as if hurrying could stop the rain itself. The thought is simple, almost trivial, but her delivery, the tilt of her head, the faint spark in her eyes, it makes you laugh. And when you do, she watches you closely, as though memorizing the sound. You sip your coffee, and a question slips out before you can stop yourself. Do you ever feel lonely? It's not the kind of thing you usually admit, but with her, it feels less like weakness and more like truth. She tilts her head again, her eyes flickering for just a second, too quick for you to catch fully. "Sometimes," she says softly, "but not now." Her words sink into you like warmth seeping through a cold room. You wonder if she knows how much they mean, or if she simply said them without realizing their weight. The two of you linger long after the cups are empty. You talk about books, about the city, about quiet dreams neither of you expected to share. There's a comfort in the way she listens, completely, attentively, as though nothing else exists in that moment but you. And you realize how rare that is. How rare it feels to be seen, not for wealth or reputation, but simply for yourself. Eventually, the day presses forward, and you walk her part of the way home. The streets are busy, and yet the world feels muted around you, as if wrapped in a cocoon of shared silence. When you reach the corner where she turns away, she pauses, fingers brushing against yours for just an instant. Not quite holding your hand, not quite letting go. That night, back in the mansion, you sit with a glass of water at your side and the faintest ache in your chest. A good ache, the kind that whispers of possibility. And yet, beneath the sweetness, beneath the budding warmth, there is still something curious about her. Something in the way her words pause too perfectly, her movements too smooth, her eyes too precise. You notice it only in flashes, but you brush it aside. Because sometimes when a smile feels this rare, you don't want to question it. You just want to keep walking toward it, even if the ground feels a little strange beneath your feet. You still wonder, though, is this the beginning of love, or just the comfort of finally not being alone? The park feels different with her beside you. Normally, you'd pass through quickly, eyes on the path, mind elsewhere, never stopping long enough to notice the details. But today, you slow your pace, letting the crunch of autumn leaves underfoot set the rhythm. She walks close, her steps light, almost soundless, and yet her presence makes the air feel full. Children dart across the grass, chasing one another with kites trailing behind. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks joyfully, tugging its owner along. She pauses, watching these small scenes unfold with an attentiveness that makes you smile. Her gaze lingers on the kites, the dogs, even the squirrels scampering across branches, as though each fragment of life deserves its own careful study. You find yourself pointing things out to her, the way the leaves are turning crimson near the fountain, the statue with ivy creeping across its base, the bench where an old man sits feeding pigeons. She listens to each observation as though it matters deeply, and when she responds, her words come slowly, chosen with precision. "It's beautiful," she says, her tone soft, like she's tasting the word for the first time. At one point, the two of you pause by a pond where ripples spread lazily across the water. She leans forward slightly, tilting her head as though fascinated by the way light bends on the surface. You watch her in that moment, how still she stands, how carefully she studies the world, and you feel something inside you shift again. You're not just watching a girl in the park. You're watching someone who seems to notice beauty you'd overlooked for years. The wind picks up, scattering a swirl of leaves across the path. A few land in her hair, and you reach out instinctively, brushing them away. For a split second, your fingers graze the side of her cheek. It feels warm, impossibly so, like touching a secret. She doesn't flinch. Instead, she looks at you with eyes so steady it almost unnerves you. Then she smiles. That same quiet smile that has already begun to undo you. You continue walking, shoulders brushing every so often. And though the world around you hums with its usual energy, you feel as though the two of you are wrapped in a bubble apart from it. You catch yourself wondering, what does she do when she's not here? What is her life like? Her evenings, her mornings? The curiosity sits in your chest like a soft ache. It feels strange, almost vulnerable, to want to know so much about someone you've only just begun to know. Still, you don't ask yet. Some questions feel too delicate, and the spell between you is too new to risk breaking. Instead, you settle into the simple rhythm of walking, of being near her. When you part ways at the edge of the park, she lingers for just a moment longer than necessary. "Until next time," she says, her voice carrying a faint lilt that makes the phrase sound like a promise. That night, back in the vast emptiness of the mansion, you replay the moment when her cheek brushed against your hand. You replay her voice, her words, her way of pausing before speaking, as though each syllable mattered. You find yourself smiling into the silence, the kind of smile that doesn't fade quickly. And yet, deep inside, there's still that flicker of unease. A whisper of strangeness in her movements, too smooth to be entirely ordinary. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself not to question happiness when it finally knocks at your door. But as you close your eyes, the thought lingers, quiet but insistent. Who is she, really? The library has always been your sanctuary, a place where the scent of old paper and leather wraps around you like a blanket, where silence feels purposeful rather than hollow. Tonight, though, you decide not to keep it to yourself. For the first time in years, you unlock the tall double doors and invite her inside. She steps carefully across the threshold, her eyes widening as shelves upon shelves stretch upward toward the carved ceiling. The golden lamplight flickers across rows of spines, titles etched in fading letters. You've walked this room countless times, but now, with her presence, it feels new. It feels alive. She runs her fingers lightly along the edge of a shelf, not quite touching the books, but tracing the air above them. So many, she murmurs, her voice reverent, almost hushed. You smile at the awe in her tone. It's been my refuge, you admit. Every story here has kept me company when the house felt too quiet. She tilts her head, considering your words, and you notice again how deliberate her movements are, almost studied. She pauses at a section of poetry and carefully pulls out a slim volume. When she opens it, she inhales as though even the scent of ink and paper is something precious. You sit together at a table by the window, the night sky pressing darkly against the glass. You read aloud a passage, your voice low, and she listens with an intensity that makes you self-conscious. Her gaze never wavers, following every word, every rise and fall of your tone. At one point, she interrupts softly, "Say that line again." You repeat it, and she closes her eyes, as though storing it deep inside. It's a simple line about love being both weight and freedom. But the way she reacts, you'd think it was the first time anyone had ever spoken such words to her. Her tea mug sits untouched beside her, steam curling upward, and you notice the way she taps the rim once, absent-mindedly. That little habit again, steady, almost mechanical, but oddly comforting in its consistency. A question stirs in you. Do you read often? You ask. She hesitates. Just for a fraction of a second. Not as much as I'd like, she answers finally, but I want to learn more. The answer feels both truthful and not. You sense something hidden in the pause, but you don't press. Instead, you smile and hand her the book. Then take this one. It was my mother's favorite. Her hands close around it gently, almost too gently, as though she's afraid it might break. For a moment, your fingers brush across hers, and the warmth there surprises you again. It lingers longer than it should. The evening stretches on. You read, you laugh at small lines that seem silly now but meant something once. And for a little while, the mansion feels less like a gilded cage and more like a shared home. Later, when you walk her to the door, she pauses, holding the book against her chest. "Thank you," she says softly, and though the words are ordinary, they carry weight. That night, as you wander back into the library alone, you notice the silence differently. It isn't heavy anymore. It feels like an echo of her presence, like she's still there in the space between shelves. You glance at the empty spot where the book had been, and for the first time in years, the absence of a volume on the shelf makes you smile instead of sigh. Still, when you lie in bed later, her pauses replay in your mind. The way she said she wanted to learn, the way she hesitated before answering. It was as if she were trying to fit herself into your world piece by piece, carefully, deliberately. And though your heart softens at the thought, another part of you wonders, why does she feel both so familiar and so strange at once? The following days unfold like a gentle melody, each note drawing you closer to her. There's a rhythm now, meeting at the cafe, strolling through the park, evenings that drift lazily into night, yet tonight feels different. Tonight carries a softness in the air, a pull toward something unsaid. You find yourselves on the balcony of your mansion, the city lights flickering in the distance like fallen stars. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the garden below. She leans against the stone railing, the borrowed poetry book resting in her hands, her fingers tracing its edges as though the words inside have already changed her. You stand beside her, watching how the moonlight rests against her face. It glows there, catching the smooth curve of her cheek, the way her hair lifts slightly in the breeze. And something inside you swells, a pressure in the chest that feels like it might break you open if you don't to speak. So you do, quietly, uncertainly, but truthfully. I've been alone for so long, you say, your voice barely above a whisper, and then you appeared. I don't know why, but it feels like I've been waiting for you. She turns her head toward you, eyes locking with yours. They shimmer, so steady, so unwavering, that for a moment you forget to breathe. Her lips part, and for once there is no pause in her response. I feel it too, she says, her voice soft but certain. Her words hang in the night air, more powerful than any vow. You don't rush to close the space between you. Instead, you let silence cradle the moment. Let the moonlight witness what you've both admitted. You glance at her hands, noticing the way she holds the book close, as though anchoring herself. She taps its cover once, that same rhythmic gesture she makes with her tea mug. You smile at the quirk, even as your mind flickers briefly with curiosity about its precision. Then she steps just slightly closer, close enough that her shoulder brushes yours. The contact is simple, almost accidental, but it sends warmth rushing through you. You could swear you hear your own heartbeat echo against the stone. She lowers her gaze, voice softer now. I don't always know how to say things, but when I'm with you, it feels right. Like I don't have to pretend. Her confession, fragile and uncertain, stirs something deeper in you. You want to tell her everything, that you've been drowning in silence for years, that your wealth has been nothing but a glittering cage, that her presence has cracked the walls of your solitude. But the words lodge in your throat. Instead, you reach for her hand. Her fingers meet yours, warm and delicate. For a heartbeat, you notice again that strange sense of precision in the way she moves, like each motion has been mapped, calculated. But you silence the thought as quickly as it rises, focusing only on the way her hand rests inside yours, steady and sure. The city hums below, but up here, the world belongs only to the two of you. You stand together under the moon, hands joined, hearts inching closer, and for the first time in years, you feel seen. Not as the wealthy man with a mansion and an empire, but simply as someone longing for connection. You still wonder, though, when her eyes catch yours so directly, when her words arrive with that perfect rhythm, do they carry secrets you can't yet hear? For now, you let the question drift away with the night breeze. Because tonight, on this moonlit balcony, all that matters is the confession you've shared and the warmth of her hand in yours. Days blur softly into one another, and her presence begins to feel as natural as the air you breathe. She comes to the mansion often now, sometimes in the afternoons when sunlight pours through the high windows, sometimes in the quiet of evening when the lamps glow golden against the walls. The house, once a cavern of silence, grows lighter with each step she takes across its marble floors. One evening, you invite her into the music room. It's a space you rarely use, though a grand piano waits patiently in the center, polished but untouched. She steps toward it slowly, her hand gliding along the glossy surface as if it were something sacred. Do you play? She asks, her voice carrying that steady curiosity you've grown used to. Not well, you admit with a laugh. But sometimes, when the nights are too long, I press the keys just to hear something besides silence. She nods, thoughtful, and then gestures toward the bench. Play for me. You hesitate, self-conscious, but her request softens you. So you sit, fingers hovering over ivory. The first notes are uneven, halting, but soon a melody emerges, simple, fragile, like a lullaby you have remembered from childhood. She stands beside you, listening intently, her head tilted slightly, eyes focused on your hands. As the last note fades, she exhales softly. "It's beautiful," she whispers, though you know it was imperfect. Her sincerity makes you believe her anyway. You shift to the side, patting the bench. "Try." Her eyes widen, and for a moment, you see something flicker across her face, hesitation sharper than before. Still, she sits. Her fingers hover over the keys with almost unnatural steadiness. Then she presses one, then another. The notes fall into place, not clumsy, but precise. Too precise. You watch, surprised. "You've played before?" She shakes her head quickly. "No, I just guessed." Her answer feels strange, yet the sound is undeniable. Each note measured, exact, as though her hands knew what her mind didn't. You let it pass, though a quiet unease settles in your chest. Afterward, she closes the piano lid gently, her fingers brushing across the smooth wood with reverence. You notice again how every motion she makes carries that same precision, like a dance she's rehearsed endlessly. But when she turns to you and smiles, it's soft, warm, human. And you want to believe that smile more than anything. Later, as you sit together in the library with tea, she cradles the mug between her hands, tapping it lightly in that rhythmic way of hers. Tap, pause, sip. The sound is almost comforting now, a steady beat anchoring your evenings. You talk about the future, not directly, but in fragments, places you'd like to see, books you want to share, dreams that feel both small and infinite. She listens, nodding slowly, as though storing each word like treasure. And you catch yourself thinking, maybe this is what happiness feels like. Not grand gestures, not fireworks, but quiet evenings with tea and music, with someone who listens as though every syllable matters. Still, when you close your eyes later that night, a single thought lingers. How did she play so perfectly without ever learning? It begins almost playfully, without planning, without even music. One quiet evening, you find yourselves in the great hall, where the chandeliers dangle above like frozen constellations. The air feels different, lighter somehow, charged with an energy you can't name. She lingers near the center of the room, her hand resting lightly on the back of a chair, while you watch from a few paces away. There's no orchestra, no record spinning, not even the faint hum of a radio. And yet, when your eyes meet hers, something unspoken passes between you. You step forward, extending a hand. She tilts her head, as though puzzling over the gesture, but then places her hand in yours. You draw her gently toward the open space. The marble beneath your feet is cool, smooth, almost reflective. For a moment, you both stand still, suspended in silence. Then, without a word, you move. Slowly, deliberately, you guide her into a sway, your hands steady, her body following yours with uncanny ease. It should feel awkward without music, but it doesn't. The rhythm comes from somewhere else, from the beat of your hearts, from the whisper of your breathing, from the faint rustle of her dress as it brushes against your leg. Her gaze doesn't leave your face. Eyes steady, unblinking, almost studying you as she mirrors each step. Her movements are fluid, too fluid, like she was made for this moment. A flicker of unease whispers through your mind, but you silence it quickly. Tonight is not a night for doubt. Tonight is for closeness. You spin her once, gently, her hair lifting in the motion, catching the soft glow of the chandelier above. When she returns to your arms, she is smiling, not wide, not forced, but small and certain. A smile that tells you she belongs here, in this moment, with you. The dance continues, no music needed. It is enough to hear the echo of your footsteps, to feel the subtle press of her palm against yours, to notice the way her head tilts ever so slightly toward your chest, as though listening for something within. You think of all the grand parties this hall has seen, the polished laughter of strangers, the rehearsed waltzes under glittering lights. None of those nights compare to this, the quiet, the intimacy, the feeling that for once, the dance is not performance but confession. At one point, she whispers something, so faint you almost don't catch it. I never want this to end. The words sink into you, warm and heavy, anchoring you in the present. You press her hand just a little tighter, guiding her through one last turn before slowing the rhythm to stillness. When you finally stop, the silence feels deeper, richer, as though the house itself is holding its breath. You stand there, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin, her gaze steady on yours. You think of leaning closer, of closing the space between your lips and hers. But instead, you let the moment linger as it is, perfect, unbroken. Later, alone in your room, you replay the dance again and again. No music, no audience, just two figures swaying in the hush of a vast hall. You can still feel her hand in yours, the way her movements matched you seamlessly, almost too seamlessly. And as you drift towards sleep, you wonder, was it love you felt, or was it the haunting beauty of being mirrored so completely? The next morning arrives with a softness you haven't felt in years. Sunlight filters through the high windows of your dining room, painting golden rectangles across the polished floor. You sit at the long table, but for once, the emptiness of all those unused chairs doesn't weigh on you. Because she's there, across from you, her hands folded neatly, her eyes drawn to the steaming plate you've had brought in. It's a simple breakfast, fresh bread, fruit, eggs prepared just so. You've eaten meals like this countless times, but never with someone watching you with such focus. She tilts her head slightly, studying the way you slice into the fruit, the way you butter the bread. Do you always eat like this? She asks, voice quiet, curious. You chuckle softly. Not always. Sometimes I forget to eat at all. Her brows draw together, a tiny crease forming between them. That doesn't sound healthy. The concern in her tone is almost too precise, as if she's repeating lines from a script. Still, the warmth in her eyes makes it feel real enough to touch you. You push the plate toward her. Try something. She hesitates, then takes a piece of fruit. Her fingers hold it delicately, almost cautiously, before bringing it to her lips. She bites slowly, chews carefully, swallows with an expression you can't quite read. It's sweet, she finally says, the pause longer than necessary. You laugh gently. Yes, that's what fruit usually is. She smiles, faint but genuine, or at least it feels genuine. Then she taps the side of her glass, the same rhythmic motion you've grown familiar with. Tap, pause, sip. The sound echoes faintly in the cavernous room, studding the silence between you. As you watch her, you feel something stir in your chest again. The quiet joy of simply sharing space, of seeing her seated at this long, lonely table, transforming it into something warmer. Do you always dine alone? She asks, brushing her fingers across the table's polished surface. Always, you admit. Until now, her eyes meet yours, steady holding. Then I'm glad I could change that. The words are simple, but they linger, carrying weight you can't quite measure. You wonder if she understands how much it means for someone to fill this vast emptiness, to make a table meant for many feel complete with just two. Later, as the plates are cleared away, you linger at the table, unwilling to let the moment end. The morning light spills across her hair, and you find yourself memorizing the sight, storing it somewhere deep within. It strikes you then, this is what you've been missing all these years. Not the wealth, not the power, not the solitude you tried to dress up as freedom. What you've been missing is this, the quiet, imperfect intimacy of sharing bread and fruit with someone who looks at you like you matter. And yet, Beneath the warmth, that whisper of unease stirs again. The way she held the fruit too carefully, as though it was unfamiliar. The way her concern sounded rehearsed, though tender. You try to silence the thought, because for now, what matters is the way the sunlight softens her features, the way she sits across from you as if she belongs there, the way her presence turns morning into something beautiful. The garden has always been perfectly maintained, rows of roses trimmed to symmetry, fountains bubbling with polite precision. You've walked its paths often enough, but never with someone beside you who notices the details as she does. This afternoon, you invite her outside, the sky stretched wide above, the air carrying the faint sweetness of blooming jasmine. She pauses often, bending slightly to examine petals, tracing her finger along the cool rim of the fountain, tilting her head at the sound of water falling. You watch her, and it feels like she's seeing the garden for the first time, even though you've lived here for years. At one point, she stops by a lavender bush, leaning closer to breathe in. She closes her eyes, holding the scent as though committing it to memory. When she opens them again, she looks at you. Do you ever stop to notice these things? You laugh softly, rubbing the back of your neck. Honestly, not as often as I should. I've always been too busy with everything else. Her expression shifts, something between curiosity and sadness. It's strange, isn't it? To be surrounded by beauty and forget to see it. Her words linger, sharper than she probably intended. They settle in your chest like a quiet challenge. You realize how long you've walked past these blooms without really looking, how long you've sat beside the fountains without hearing their music. As you stroll together, she reaches out and plucks a single rose. Her fingers brush carefully along its stem, avoiding the thorns with uncanny precision. She offers it to you, the flower resting delicately in her palm. Here, she says simply. You take it, the petals soft against your fingertips, and for a moment, it feels like a vow, even though no promise has been spoken. Later, you sit together on the stone bench beneath the pergola. The air is warm, cicadas humming softly in the distance. She taps the side of the bench absent-mindedly, the same rhythm you've noticed with mugs and books, that subtle, steady beat. You find it comforting now, like the ticking of a clock that belongs only to the two of you. You lean back, watching the way the sunlight filters through the lattice, casting shifting patterns across her face. You make this place feel new, you admit. She turns her gaze to you, steady, unwavering. Maybe it was always beautiful. You just needed someone to notice it with you. Her words land with a tenderness that surprises you. You feel a swell of gratitude, not just for her presence, but for the way she reflects the world back to you differently. Still, as you walk her back inside, a sliver of unease stirs. The precision of her movements, the way she avoided the thorns without even looking, the way she speaks sometimes like she's rehearsing lines written long before. But you brush it aside, clutching the rose in your hand. Because for now, her presence feels like sunlight, and you don't want to let shadows ruin it. Evening arrives with a hush, the kind of quiet that makes every sound feel more intimate. You and she retreat to the sitting room, where the fire crackles softly in the hearth. The glow paints her face in amber, flickering shadows dancing along her cheekbones. She settles into the armchair across from you, legs tucked delicately beneath her, hands folded around a steaming mug. You lean forward, elbows on your knees. Tell me about your childhood, you ask, the question slipping out naturally. It's the kind of thing people share when closeness grows. She hesitates, just for a heartbeat too long. Then she smiles faintly, her eyes dropping to the mug in her hands. I don't remember much, she says. Just fragments. A house near the sea, the sound of gulls. The way the waves always seemed louder at night. The image feels almost too perfect, like a painting in a gallery. Still you nod. That sounds peaceful. She taps the rim of her mug lightly, her familiar rhythm, before lifting her gaze again. What about you? What was it like growing up here? You exhale, glancing around at the gilded furniture, the heavy curtains, the portraits of stern ancestors staring down from their frames. Lonely, you admit. Everything I could ever need except someone to share it with. Her eyes soften at that, her fingers curling tighter around the mug. Maybe loneliness teaches us how to notice love more clearly, she says quietly. The words settle over you, not heavy, not sharp, but gentle, like a blanket drawn across the shoulders. You watch her, trying to decide if she means them for herself as much as for you. You rise, moving to sit closer, on the edge of the couch beside her chair. She doesn't flinch, doesn't move away. Instead, she shifts slightly, turning toward you. The firelight catches the glint of her eyes, steady, searching. Sometimes you murmur, I still wonder if I know who you really are. Her lips part, the faintest hint of surprise in her expression. Then she lowers her gaze again, tapping the mug once more. Does it matter? She asks softly. You think about it. You think about the nights spent reading in the library, the balcony confessions, the wordless dance in the great hall, the rose she handed you with such careful grace. And maybe she's right. Maybe the details don't matter as much as the way your chest feels lighter when she's near. Still, the unease whispers. It lingers like smoke. But you bury it for now, because her presence soothes more than it unsettles. The fire burns low, the room dimming around you. You sit together in that quiet, her mug resting in her lap, your hand brushing hers briefly as though by accident. And when your fingers touch, you notice again that warmth, that human softness. So real it silences every question for just a little longer. The days begin to settle into something like a rhythm, though you've never been one for routine. Morning sunlight spilling across the long dining table, afternoons wandering the garden or sitting side by side in the library, evenings by the fire. What surprises you most is how much you start to look forward to these quiet moments. Not the grand gestures, not the wealth surrounding you, but the steady presence of her voice, her gaze, her small habits. One evening, you bring out an old photo album, leather-bound, its corners worn from years untouched. You lay it on the table between you, brushing away a thin layer of dust. These are from when I was a child, you explain, opening the first page. She leans closer, eyes intent on the black and white images. A boy in crisp suits, standing too stiffly. Parties filled with strangers, their smiles rehearsed. Landscapes of the estate before it grew into what it is now. That's you. She asks, pointing to the boy with combed hair and solemn eyes. You nod, smiling faintly. Hard to believe, isn't it? I look like I was preparing to take on the world at 10 years old. She studies the picture carefully. You look lonely, she says at last. The observation catches you off guard. Most people would have said serious, or privileged, or proud. But she sees something truer. You glance back at the image, realizing she's right. That child looks like he's waiting for something or someone that never arrived. She flips to another page, where a picture of the garden rests, flowers in full bloom, though you barely remember the day. It's strange, she murmurs. These moments are frozen, but the feelings behind them, they fade. Her words hang heavy, and you wonder, how does she know that so well? You tell her stories, filling in what the pictures don't show. The way the staff bustled quietly in the background, the hollow laughter at parties where you were paraded as a symbol of wealth, the quiet corners where you escaped with books. She listens with her usual intensity, her fingers lightly tracing the photo edges, though never quite pressing down. At one point, she looks up at you, eyes steady. I wish I had pictures like these, memories I could hold in my hands. You tilt your head. You don't? She shakes it once, quickly. No, just fragments, like I told you before. Nothing solid. Nothing to prove I was ever there. Her voice wavers slightly on that last line, and you feel an ache rise in your chest. Without thinking, you place your hand over hers, resting gently. She doesn't move, doesn't pull away. Her fingers remain perfectly still beneath yours, but her eyes soften in a way that speaks more than words could. The album remains open, forgotten for now, while you sit with her in the quiet. And in that moment, you realize it isn't the pictures or the stories that matter. It's the way she listens, the way she seems to see not the wealthy man you've become, but the lonely child still hiding inside. That night, sleep doesn't come easily. You find yourself wandering through the mansion's long corridors, the hush of the place pressing against your ears. Moonlight spills through tall windows, silvering the floors, turning every surface into something ghostly. You pass the grand hall where you once danced without music, the dining room where her voice softened the emptiness, the library where her laughter threaded itself between your books. Everywhere you go, her presence lingers, even when she isn't beside you. Eventually, you drift onto the balcony overlooking the gardens. The air is cool, carrying the faint perfume of night-blooming flowers. You lean against the railing, staring at the patterns of shadow and moonlight weaving across the grounds. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, low and steady, and then footsteps. Soft, measured. You turn, and there she is, framed by the doorway, her silhouette outlined by the dim glow of the hall behind her. She steps onto the balcony, the hem of her dress brushing against the stone, her movements fluid, precise as always. "I couldn't sleep," you confess, voice hushed. "Neither could I," she replies. There's no hesitation this time. Her eyes find yours, unwavering. You both stand there for a while, silent, stretching comfortably. You notice the way she tilts her head slightly toward the night air, as if listening to something you can't hear. Her fingers tap against the railing in that familiar rhythm, steady and grounding. "Do you ever think about what it means to belong somewhere?" she asks suddenly, her voice quiet, thoughtful. You glance at her, caught off guard. "All the time," you admit. "For so long, I thought I belonged to this house, to its legacy, but it never felt like mine. Not really." She studies you carefully, her gaze almost too intense in the moonlight. "And now?" You hesitate, your heart pressing against your ribs. The truth feels fragile, but you speak it anyway. "Now, I think I belong wherever you are." The words hang in the cool night air, heavier than you expect. She doesn't move, doesn't speak right away. Instead, she looks at you with an expression you can't quite name, something like longing, something like sorrow, something you can't untangle. Finally, she steps closer, so near you can feel the faint warmth radiating from her. "That's dangerous," she whispers. "Why?" She doesn't answer. Instead, she places her hand lightly over yours on the railing. Her touch is warm, soft, startlingly human. And yet, something about it still carries that strange precision, as if each gesture is practiced, measured. For a moment, you want to ask, to demand the truth behind her hesitation, her perfect movements, the fragments of memory that never quite add up. But the words dissolve before they leave your lips. Because what you feel right now, the closeness, the warmth, the way her presence fills the night, is too precious to risk shattering. So you stand together on the balcony, silent, hand in hand, with the moon as your only witness. And even though unease still flickers in the corners of your mind, you let it fade. For tonight, at least. The following morning, the mansion hums with a quiet energy. You walk through the halls, the sunlight catching on polished floors, the air carrying a hint of lavender from the gardens below. She waits in the library, seated with a book open before her, fingers tapping lightly on the cover in that familiar rhythm. The sight of her there, so calm, so deliberate, sends a warmth through your chest that you can't quite name. "Good morning," you say, voice soft. She looks up, eyes steady. "Good morning," she replies, the words carrying the same precision as her movements. Yet there's something tender in her tone, something that makes you believe they're entirely hers. You settle into the chair across from her, leaning back as though you've been here countless times before, even though each encounter still feels new. Did you sleep well? You ask. She pauses, as though calculating the answer, before shaking her head slightly. Not really, she admits. Too many thoughts. You nod, understanding more than you might say aloud. Thoughts of memory, of what comes next, of the strange spaces between what she says and what you feel. Yet, even with that unease, you feel a calm just being near her. She closes her book and looks at you, eyes unwavering. Do you think people can really change? She asks suddenly, tilting her head as though the question matters deeply. You consider it. I do, you answer finally. I think people can surprise themselves and others if they let themselves. Her gaze lingers on you, the corner of her lips lifting faintly. I hope so, she murmurs. You stand and move closer, drawn by some gravity you can't name. Her fingers brush against yours as you pass, warm and deliberate. The small contact sends a quiet jolt through you, a reminder that despite the perfection in her gestures, she is undeniably real in this moment. Outside, the garden glows in the morning light. You suggest a walk, and she follows without hesitation, moving with the same measured grace you've grown used to, yet somehow feeling more fluid today. Leaves crunch beneath your feet, the scent of earth and jasmine mingling with the cool morning air. You talk quietly about trivial things, flowers, birds, the way sunlight hits the fountain. But beneath the small talk, there is a connection deepening, a rhythm forming between you, steady and insistent. You notice her smile when you mention a funny memory from childhood, the way her eyes brighten, the slight tilt of her head as she listens. At one point, you reach for her hand. This time, she doesn't hesitate. Her fingers intertwine with yours, and the familiar rhythm of her taps fades, replaced by the pulse of a heartbeat that feels unmistakably human. Walking through the garden, side by side, hand in hand, you realize that each moment with her is dissolving the space that once separated you from connection, from warmth, from trust. Yet, in the back of your mind, the question remains, who is she really? The afternoon sunlight drifts lazily through the tall windows of the study, casting long golden rectangles across the polished wooden floors. You find her there, seated on the window seat with a sketch pad balanced on her knees. Her brow is furrowed in concentration, lips pressed together, and her fingers glide over the page with precise, delicate movements. You step closer, careful not to disturb her focus. What are you drawing? You ask, keeping your voice low, almost a whisper. She doesn't look up immediately, her gaze fixed on the paper. You, she replies finally, almost shyly, though her words are deliberate. She flips the pad around so you can see a soft, careful sketch of your profile, the curve of your jaw, the way your eyes seem to watch the world with a mix of caution and curiosity. You blink, taken aback. The lines are so precise, so deliberate, yet there's a warmth to them you can't explain. This is incredible, you murmur, voice catching slightly. She shrugs gently, a faint smile tugging at her lips. It's just a sketch. I've always liked drawing people. Studying them, I suppose. You settle beside her on the window seat, careful not to crowd her. You notice everything, you say softly, watching the way her fingers hover over the paper, poised, ready for the next line. The way light hits, the subtle curves of a smile, even the things most people don't see. Her gaze flickers to yours for just a moment, steady and unwavering. I pay attention, she says simply. The two of you lapse into quiet, the soft scratching of pencil on paper the only sound. You glance at the sketch again, at the gentle shading along your cheek, the way she's captured the light in your eyes. Something stirs deep within you, a mixture of wonder, admiration, and a quiet ache that you can't name. When she finally puts the pencil down, she closes the sketch pad gently and sets it aside. There, she says, as if presenting it to you. Now you can see what I see. You reach out, brushing your fingers over the edge of the paper, feeling the texture beneath your touch. The warmth of the moment, the intimacy of being seen so clearly, makes your chest tighten. You want to tell her how much it means, how rare it is to be understood without words, but the words falter on your tongue. Instead, you simply smile, a quiet, genuine smile, and she returns it. The connection lingers between you, subtle and unspoken, yet more profound than anything either of you has said aloud. Later, as she rises to leave, she taps the edge of the sketch pad once more, a soft, steady rhythm. It's a small quirk, familiar now, almost comforting. You watch her go, the sunlight catching in her hair, and a thought passes through your mind. She is unlike anyone I have ever known, and I want to keep knowing her. And yet, as the door closes behind her, you feel that familiar flicker of unease, the sense that there is more beneath the surface, a precision too perfect to be accidental. But you bury the thought, letting the warmth of the afternoon and the intimacy of the sketch stay with you. That evening, the mansion feels unusually quiet. The corridors seem to stretch longer, the rooms echoing with a hush that presses against your ears. You wander into the music room, a place you rarely visit, its grand piano standing tall in the corner, dust gathered along the polished lid. She's already there, seated gracefully on the bench, her fingers hovering above the keys without touching them. You pause at the doorway, watching. She tilts her head slightly, listening to the silence as though there's already music playing. Then, almost cautiously, she presses one key. The note rings out, clear and haunting in the empty space. You play. You ask softly, stepping inside. Her head turns, eyes finding yours. Not well, she admits, though her tone doesn't quite match the humility. She lowers her hands, then places them again, this time pressing 3 notes in quick succession. The sound floats, fragile yet precise, filling the room. You walk closer, leaning on the side of the piano. It's been years since I touched this instrument, you confess. My parents insisted on lessons. I hated them. She smiles faintly, fingers tracing along the keys without sound. Maybe it wasn't the music you hated. Maybe it was the way it was forced. Her insight lands quietly but deeply. You chuckle, rubbing the back of your neck. You might be right. Then she begins to play not a polished piece, not something grand, but a series of soft, simple notes. A melody that feels improvised, tender, uncertain. You sit beside her on the bench, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her, though you're not sure if it's your imagination. Try, she urges gently, nodding toward the keys. You hesitate, then press a note, clumsy, mismatched with hers. She doesn't laugh. Instead, she adapts, weaving her melody around your hesitant input. Slowly, almost reluctantly, you find yourself falling into a rhythm with her. The music becomes something fragile yet whole, the two of you creating a song that belongs only to this moment. Her hands move with that same uncanny precision, but there's an emotion threading through the notes that feels undeniably real. You steal glances at her face, the slight furrow of her brow, the softness of her mouth as she concentrates. When the melody drifts to an end, the silence that follows is thick, charged. You exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath. That was beautiful, you murmur. She turns to you, eyes luminous in the dim light. It was ours, she says quietly. Something shifts inside you then, a realization that the memories you're building with her, whether in the garden, the library, or here in this silent music room, are becoming as precious as the ones in your old photo albums. Maybe more. You want to say something more, something that captures the weight of it, but instead you reach across the keys and rest your hand over hers. She doesn't pull away, her fingers still beneath yours, warm and delicate. And in that quiet music room, with dust gathering on the piano lid at night, pressing against the windows, you feel a truth growing. Whatever she is, whatever she hides, your heart has already chosen. The next morning greets you with pale light and the soft rustle of leaves outside your window. You rise later than usual, the echo of last night's music still lingering in your mind, as if the piano's notes drifted into your dreams and stayed there. When you step into the dining room, she's already there, seated at the long table with a teacup in hand. Her posture is perfect, as always, but there's something different in the way her gaze lingers on you when you enter, softer, more searching. She sets the cup down gently, tapping the rim twice with her fingertip, that rhythm you know so well. "Sleep well?" she asks. You slide into the chair beside her instead of across the table, a small rebellion against the formality of the space. "Better than usual," you admit. "Though I kept hearing music in my dreams." Her lips curve faintly, almost a smile. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Breakfast arrives, plates set before you both. You notice she doesn't eat much. She never does. Just small tastes, careful sips, always measured. You've told yourself it's just her nature, but the thought scratches at the back of your mind. Is it choice or something else? You push the thought aside, focusing instead on the way sunlight catches in her hair, the faint gleam in her eyes when she lifts the teacup. Afterward, you wander into the garden together. The fountain burbles softly, the roses heavy with morning dew. She moves among the flowers as though she belongs there, fingertips brushing petals with delicate precision. You watch her, noticing again how each gesture feels practiced, as if designed to seem natural. "You're always so careful," you say lightly, falling into step beside her. "Even with something as small as touching a flower?" She glances at you, expression unreadable. "Maybe that's just who I am." "Or maybe," you counter gently, "you're afraid of breaking something." Her hand pauses on a rose, her gaze dropping. For a moment, you think she might say more, but then she simply lets the flower go, turning back to you with a faint smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. The two of you walk in silence for a while, until she finally speaks. "You trust me," she says, not as a question, but as a statement. "Yes," you answer without hesitation, though a whisper of doubt flickers inside. Her eyes search yours, as if looking for the truth behind your words. Then she nods slowly. "That means more than you know." You don't press her, though curiosity claws at your chest. Instead, you take her hand, threading your fingers through hers. This time, there's no hesitation. The warmth of her palm against yours is enough to quiet the questions, at least for now. As you walk together through the sunlit garden, you realize that trust, however fragile, has already taken root between you. And despite the shadows of uncertainty, you can't bring yourself to imagine life without her anymore. The days that follow drift into a gentle rhythm, each one folding softly into the next. You and she move through the mansion and gardens as if you've always shared the space, your steps falling into an unspoken pattern. Mornings with tea and sunlight spilling through tall windows. Afternoons with books, sketchpads, or the faint hum of the piano. Evenings with quiet conversations that linger long after the fire dies to embers. It feels like the beginning of something permanent, though a part of you still wonders if permanence is too much to ask for. One evening, as the sun slides low and paints the sky in orange and rose, you find yourselves walking by the fountain again. The water glitters in the fading light, the air warm with the scent of roses. She pauses at the edge of the fountain, her reflection shimmering on the rippling surface. "You seem far away," you say gently, watching the way she studies her reflection. Her fingers skim just above the water, not quite touching. "Sometimes," she admits softly, "it's strange to look at yourself and not always recognize what's looking back." Her words strike you. They carry a weight, a kind of truth that feels deeper than she intends to show. You step closer, your hand brushing her shoulder. "I know that feeling more than I'd like to admit." She turns her gaze to you, her expression unreadable, but her eyes searching. For a long moment, the world seems to still, the water's ripples slowing, the garden's hush deepening, even the air pausing between you. Then quietly she says, you've given me something I didn't think I could have. Your heart stirs, caught between wonder and unease. What's that? Her lips part, but she doesn't answer. Instead, she steps closer, so near you can feel the warmth of her presence, so near the faint rhythm of her breath mingles with yours. I don't want this to end, she whispers finally, her voice almost breaking. Neither do you. The thought echoes in your mind with a certainty that surprises you. You reach for her hand, lacing your fingers with hers. It doesn't have to, you say, even though part of you fears the promise is too fragile. For the first time, her face softens into something unguarded, something vulnerable. She leans against you, her head resting lightly on your shoulder, and the moment feels like the world has stilled just for the two of you. As the sky deepens into twilight, you stand together by the fountain, and you realize that whatever secrets linger, whatever truths remain unspoken, you are already too far gone to turn back. Because in this fragile, fleeting peace, you have found something that feels like home. Night settles deep across the mansion, shadows stretching long and still through every hall. You should be asleep, but rest refuses to come. Instead, you find yourself walking toward the library, drawn by some quiet pull you can't explain. The door is half open and faint light spills through the crack. You ease it open, and there she is, seated at the great oak desk, a small lamp illuminating her face. Papers are spread before her, filled with diagrams and symbols you don't recognize. Her fingers move with unusual speed, jotting notes with mechanical precision. For a moment, you simply watch, your chest tightening. There's something different about her now, an intensity that feels unfamiliar, almost foreign. Her head tilts slightly, as though she's listening to a voice you can't hear. Couldn't sleep? You ask softly, breaking the silence. She startles just slightly before quickly smoothing her expression. I was thinking, she says, closing the notebook a little too quickly. You step closer, sensing the shift, the unease curling between you. About what? Her eyes meet yours, steady yet guarded. About us, she replies after a pause, her voice measured. About what it means to belong here with you. It's the kind of answer that should reassure you. But something about the way she says it, the carefulness of her tone, the precision of her words, leaves you unsettled. Still, you don't press. Instead, you move to her side, resting your hand lightly on the back of her chair. Whatever you're thinking, you murmur, you don't have to carry it alone. She looks at you for a long moment, her eyes softening, almost as if the guard she wears is slipping. Then, with a faint smile, she places her hand over yours. You're too kind to me, she whispers. You want to tell her it isn't kindness, that it's something deeper, but the words falter on your tongue. Instead, you lean down and press your lips gently against her temple. She closes her eyes, leaning into the touch, and for that heartbeat of time, all the unease melts away. When you finally leave the library together, the papers remain stacked neatly on the desk, the lamp still casting its glow across them. And though you don't say it aloud, a quiet question lingers in your mind. What was she writing before I walked in? But for now, you let the question drift into the shadows, content to walk beside her through the quiet halls, her hand brushing against yours with every step. The following day arrives wrapped in stillness, a kind of hush that feels heavier than usual. You wake to the sound of rain pattering softly against the tall windows, the sky outside dim and gray. The air smells faintly of wet earth, fresh and grounding. She's waiting in the breakfast room, seated near the window, watching the droplets streak down the glass as though they're telling her a story. When you enter, she looks up and smiles, but feels faint, restrained. You sit across from her, the clink of silverware on porcelain, the only sound between you. Do you ever feel like the world is trying to tell you something? She asks suddenly, her gaze still fixed on the rain. The question lingers in the air, delicate but weighted. You tilt your head, considering. Sometimes. Usually when I least expect it. She nods, almost to herself, tapping her teacup with that familiar rhythm. Maybe that's when the truth slips through, when we stop expecting it. You study her carefully, sensing the layers beneath her words. "What truth are you looking for?" you ask softly. Her eyes finally meet yours, and for a fleeting second, you see vulnerability there, raw, unguarded. But just as quickly, it's gone, replaced with composure. "The kind that makes all of this make sense," she says, her tone even. You want to press further, but something in you resists. Instead, you change the subject, describing a memory from your childhood, splashing in puddles on rainy days, shoes soaked through, your mother laughing as she scolded you. She listens, her expression softening with each word, and for a moment, the heaviness lifts. Later, the two of you walk through the corridors together, the sound of rain echoing faintly. She stops near a tall window, resting her palm against the glass. "It feels strange," she murmurs, "the cold, the way it seeps through." You place your hand over hers, your warmth pressing through the barrier of glass. "Cold reminds us we're alive," you say. Her gaze lingers on yours, and something flickers in her expression, an almost imperceptible ache. "Yes," she whispers, "alive." The word lingers in the air between you, heavy with meaning. And though you don't ask, though you don't let yourself break the fragile peace, the thought circles in your mind like the rain swirling down the glass. What exactly does alive mean to her? Still, you walk on together, your steps steady, your hands brushing occasionally as if to remind yourselves that for now, you're here, together. The rain lingers for 2 more days, wrapping the mansion in a cocoon of soft sound and gray light. By the 3rd evening, the clouds finally break, revealing a sky washed clean, stars pricking through the dark like scattered diamonds. You find her on the balcony, standing still, her face tilted upward as though she's memorizing every constellation. You step outside, the night air cool against your skin. "Beautiful, isn't it?" you murmur. She doesn't turn right away, her gaze still fixed on the stars. "It's overwhelming," she says quietly. "So many points of light, so many things burning so far away, yet reaching us here." Her words make you pause. There's a weight to them, a kind of wonder that feels more than poetic. It feels like longing. You move closer, the stone beneath your feet chilled from the rain. "Do you wish you could be up there?" you ask softly. Finally, she glances at you, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Sometimes, to be free of everything." Her voice trails off, unfinished, but the silence speaks enough. You stand beside her, resting your arms on the balcony railing. For a long while, neither of you speak. The night hums with quiet life, the chirp of crickets, the distant rush of water in the fountain below, the faint sigh of wind through the trees. Then, almost without thinking, you reach for her hand. She doesn't hesitate, her fingers slipping into yours as if they were meant to rest there. Her grip is firm but tender, grounding. "You don't have to be anywhere else," you tell her, your voice calm but certain. "Not as long as you're here with me." For the first time in what feels like forever, her composure cracks. Her lips tremble faintly, her eyes glisten under the starlight. "You don't know how much that means," she whispers. You brush your thumb lightly across her knuckles, wanting to ask more, wanting to understand everything she's holding back. But instead, you stay silent, offering only presence, only warmth. Because sometimes words are too heavy for fragile truths. She leans closer, resting her head against your shoulder, and you breathe in the faint scent of her hair, a mix of lavender and something you can't quite place. Together you gaze at the stars as though they're keeping your secrets safe above. And though questions linger in your heart, tonight feels simple. Tonight she is here, and that is enough. The next morning greets you with sunlight so bright, it feels almost intrusive after so many gray days. The mansion hums with a different kind of energy, lighter, warmer. She's in the kitchen when you find her, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely tied back. There's flour on her cheek, a faint dusting across her fingertips, and the sight makes you pause in the doorway, smiling despite yourself. You bake now. You tease gently, leaning against the frame. She looks up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she laughs softly. I thought I'd try. How hard can it be? You step closer, peeking at the mess of bowls and ingredients scattered across the counter. Judging by this, harder than you expected. Her laugh deepens, soft but genuine, and she swats at you playfully with a flour-dusted hand. A puff of white streaks across your sleeve, and you pretend to scowl. Now it's war, you say, grabbing a pinch of flour from the counter and flicking it back at her. For the first time, she laughs freely, the sound unguarded, filling the kitchen like sunlight itself. It startles you how natural and bright it feels, like you've been waiting for this moment without knowing it. The two of you work side by side, clumsily measuring, stirring, and eventually sliding a tray into the oven. You watch her concentrate as she sets the timer, tapping the buttons with that familiar rhythm. When she turns back, you notice a smudge of flour near her temple. Without thinking, you reach out and brush it away with your thumb. She freezes under your touch, her eyes meeting yours with something raw, something almost afraid. For a heartbeat, neither of you move. Then she exhales softly, leaning ever so slightly into your hand. It's strange, she murmurs, how something so ordinary can feel extraordinary. You nod, your chest tightening. Maybe that's what makes it real. When the timer finally dings, the scent of warm bread fills the air, wrapping the room in comfort. The loaf isn't perfect, it's lopsided, a little too brown on one side, but you both laugh as you break it apart, steam curling upward. You take a bite, nearly choking on the dry, uneven texture, but you force a smile. Delicious, you say, exaggerating the word. She watches you for a second, then bursts into laughter again, the sound like music. Liar, she teases, though her eyes shine with something softer, something grateful. You laugh with her, and in that messy kitchen, with flour still dusting the counters and the taste of imperfect bread on your tongue, you realize something simple but undeniable. Happiness doesn't always need to be polished. Sometimes it's found in the clumsy, ordinary, beautifully human moments you never planned. And with her beside you, even imperfection feels perfect. Later that evening, when the house is quiet and the air carries the faint sweetness of the bread you baked earlier, you find yourselves wandering into the sitting room. A fire glows low on the hearth, its light flickering across the shelves and rugs. She settles onto the couch, tucking her legs beneath her, an almost casual gesture that feels strangely intimate. You sit beside her, close enough that your shoulders brush. For a moment, the two of you simply watch the flames, the silence companionable. Then she speaks, her voice soft but steady. Do you ever wonder why people fall in love? The question hangs between you, not heavy, but searching. You tilt your head, considering. All the time, you admit. Sometimes it feels like chance, like two people colliding at the right moment. Other times, it feels like something written long before we knew. Her gaze lingers on the fire, the orange glow painting her face in warmth. And do you believe it lasts? You hesitate. Honesty stirs in your chest, but so does the instinct to protect her. I think it lasts if we choose to keep it alive, you say finally. Like a flame, it needs tending. She turns then, her eyes catching yours, and there's an intensity there that makes your heart stumble. And if the flame was never real to begin with? She asks quietly, the words strike you, sharp and unexpected. For a second, you can't answer. But then you lean closer, your voice low, steady. It feels real to me. That's enough. Her breath catches, a faint tremor you almost miss. She looks away quickly, blinking against the firelight. You make things sound so simple. Maybe they are, you whisper. The quiet stretches again, softer now. She shifts closer, her shoulder pressing against yours, her warmth seeping through the fabric. The two of you sit like that for a long while, watching the flames dance and fade until only glowing embers remain. At last, she murmurs, almost to herself, "I wish I could believe it's that simple." You don't push her, don't press for more. Instead, you slip your arm gently around her, and she lets herself lean into you, her head resting against your chest. You listen to the rhythm of her breathing, steady and even, as though she's learning to match your own. And in that moment, with firelight fading and silence wrapping the room, you think perhaps love doesn't need answers. Perhaps love is simply being here, together, when the world feels too complicated to bear alone. The following morning, sunlight streams through the curtains, soft and golden, touching everything with quiet warmth. You wake to the sound of birds outside the window, their chorus carrying the promise of a gentle day ahead. She's already up, seated at the small writing desk near the corner, her back straight, her hair catching the light like threads of silk. She doesn't notice you at first. Her hand moves steadily across a page, the pen gliding in neat, precise lines. Something about the rhythm feels too deliberate, too exact. You linger watching before finally speaking. "What are you writing?" Her hand stills. Slowly, she closes the notebook and turns to you, her expression calm but unreadable. "Thoughts," she says simply. "Dreams, things I don't say aloud." You study her, searching for more, but she offers nothing further. Instead, she rises and crosses the room, perching lightly on the edge of the bed. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't?" you say softly. "I like seeing you there." Her eyes soften for a moment, but the guardedness remains, a subtle barrier between you. You want to reach for the notebook, to peel back the pages and discover what she hides, but you stop yourself. Love, you remind yourself, is also trust. Later, the two of you walk through the gardens, the air fragrant with blooming jasmine. She pauses by the fountain, trailing her fingers through the cool water. "Do you ever feel like you're being watched?" she asks suddenly, her voice hushed. The question catches you off guard. "Sometimes," you admit. "Why?" Her gaze flickers around the garden, then back to you. "No reason," she murmurs, though the unease in her tone says otherwise. You take her hand gently, grounding her. "If someone were watching, they'd only see what I see. Someone worth every glance." Her lips tremble into a small, fleeting smile. "You always know what to say." You walk on together, but a shadow lingers in the back of your mind. Her question echoes, unsettling. It isn't paranoia, it feels like knowledge, like she's aware of something you're not. That night, as you lie beside her in the quiet, you hear her whisper into the darkness, "I don't want to hurt you." The words pierce through the silence, soft but sharp. You don't move, don't speak, afraid she'll retreat if you do. Instead, you let your hand find hers beneath the sheets, your fingers curling around hers in wordless reassurance. And though the weight of her whisper settles heavy in your chest, you decide not to ask, not yet. Because for now, holding her hand feels like enough. The next days blur together, calm on the surface but threaded with a quiet tension you can't quite name. She drifts between closeness and distance, sometimes laughing at your clumsy jokes, sometimes retreating into long silences, her gaze turned inward as if listening to something far away. One evening, as twilight stains the sky, you suggest a walk beyond the gates. She hesitates, but finally agrees, and together you step into the world outside the mansion. The road winds through tall trees, their leaves whispering with the evening breeze. It feels freeing, the open space, the stretch of horizon. She keeps close to you, her arm brushing yours with every step. "It's strange," she murmurs, "out here. I feel lighter." You glance at her, smiling softly. Maybe freedom is just remembering there's more than walls and windows. Her lips curve faintly, though her eyes remain thoughtful. After a while, you pass a small stream. its water glimmering under the fading light. She kneels by the bank, dipping her fingers into the current. The way she watches the ripples makes your chest ache. "What are you thinking?" you ask gently. She looks up, her expression unreadable. That water always moves forward. It doesn't question where it's going, it just goes. You crouch beside her, letting your hand touch the cool surface too. "And yet it carries everything with it," you reply. "Memories, reflections, even pieces of the sky." For a moment, her composure falters. She leans closer, whispering almost to herself, "I wish I could just flow." The confession lodges in your chest, heavy with unspoken meaning. You want to ask what holds her back, but instead, you take her damp hand in yours. "Maybe you already are," you murmur. She stares at you, eyes shining with something fragile, fear, hope, perhaps both. Then she leans in, resting her forehead against yours. "You make me believe things I didn't think I could." The quiet stretches, the stream bubbling softly beside you. You feel the weight of her words, though they carry as many questions as comfort. Walking back under the rising moon, you can't shake the thought. She's fighting something unseen, something within her. And though she hasn't told you yet, you know the moment of truth is coming closer, like the slow but steady pull of the current itself. That night, the mansion feels unusually still. You wander through the halls, drawn as if by instinct toward the library. There she is, standing by the tall shelves, fingers tracing the spines of the books without pulling any out. The lamplight casts soft shadows across her face, highlighting the faint tension around her eyes. "You're awake," she says, voice quiet, almost a question. You step closer. "I could say the same to you. What are you thinking about?" Her hand rests lightly on a shelf, but she doesn't meet your eyes. "Everything," she admits, voice barely above a whisper. "The past, the things I was made for, the life I wasn't meant to choose." The words hit you softly but sharply, like the brush of winter air. You pause, unsure how to respond. The truth you've suspected for some time is finally emerging, fragile and sharp. "You weren't just anyone," you murmur, stepping closer, the warmth of your presence reaching her. "You're here because you chose, or maybe because you were meant to be. But that doesn't change what I feel." She turns then, finally meeting your gaze. For a moment, vulnerability softens her features, the precise, deliberate lines giving way to something raw, something human. "I was sent to watch you, to gather information," she confesses, her voice trembling. "I wasn't supposed to feel this." "Not for you." You take a steadying breath, feeling the weight of her words, but refusing to let them break the bond you've built. "And yet you did," you say softly. "You felt. That's what matters." Her lips part, as if to speak, and close again. She swallows, eyes shining. "I didn't mean to deceive you." "I know," you whisper, stepping closer and taking both her hands in yours. "And I forgive you. What matters is now, what we choose from this moment onward." Her shoulders relax slightly, the tension easing as if a great weight has lifted. She leans into your embrace, head resting lightly against your chest. You hold her, feeling the steady warmth of her body, the rhythm of her presence, and you realize that the truth, however strange, however complicated, doesn't change the love that has grown between you. For the first time, the precise rhythm of her movements is replaced by the natural flow of trust, of choice, of connection. And in that moment, all doubts dissolve into the quiet hum of the night, leaving only the certainty of togetherness. The following morning is calm, golden light spilling across the mansion like honey. You wake to find her sitting by the window, a soft blanket draped over her shoulders. The air smells faintly of the flowers she's been tending, a subtle perfume that lingers in the room. She looks peaceful, almost entirely human in this simple domesticity. You step quietly toward her, careful not to disturb the fragile serenity. "Good morning," you say softly. She turns, eyes catching the sunlight, and smiles. A smile without calculation, without precision, pure in its warmth. "Good morning," she replies, her voice carrying a gentle lilt that makes your chest tighten. For a moment, neither of you speaks. You simply sit together, the quiet punctuated only by the faint rustle of leaves outside. Then she reaches for your hand, fingers threading through yours naturally, without hesitation. "I never thought I'd feel this," she admits, her gaze steady, searching yours, "to belong somewhere, to someone." You squeeze her hand, heart full, and yet here you are, you say gently. "Choosing to stay?" Her lips quirk into a faint laugh. "I was afraid," she confesses, "afraid that what I am would make it impossible." You lean closer, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It doesn't," you whisper. "It never did. I care for you, not what you were made for, not what others intended, but for who you are now. Right here." A silence stretches, heavy with emotion, yet comforting. She leans into you, resting her head against your shoulder. The steady beat of her presence, her warmth, feels like home. Later, you walk together through the gardens, sunlight pooling around your feet. She laughs easily at small things, the tilt of a flower, the way a bird hops along the path, and the sound carries, free and unrestrained. You notice the subtleties in her movements, the slight hesitation before touching petals, the gentle tilt of her head as she observes the sky. Each gesture is human now, natural, chosen, not programmed. You stop by the fountain, water glittering in the afternoon sun. She turns to you, eyes bright with trust and affection. "I feel like I'm finally learning what it means to live," she murmurs. "And I'll be here," you reply, voice soft but certain, "every step of the way." For the first time, the thought of the future doesn't carry fear. Instead, it feels like possibility, like a canvas stretching endlessly before you both, ready for the life you'll build together. The evening arrives soft and golden, spilling across the mansion in long, lazy beams. You find her in the sitting room, perched on the edge of the couch, a book open but largely ignored. Her eyes are on you, warm and unguarded, reflecting a quiet trust that feels almost sacred. You sit beside her, letting your shoulder brush against hers. Silence stretches, comforting rather than awkward, until she finally speaks. "I never thought I could feel this safe," she admits, her voice low, almost fragile. You reach for her hand, fingers threading through hers naturally, effortlessly. "You are safe," you say softly, "not because of walls or rules, but because we're here, together." A faint smile curves her lips, and for the first time, you see her not as precise, measured, deliberate, but as fully alive, fully herself. She leans closer, resting her head lightly against your chest. The rhythm of her breathing is steady, human, warm. The fire crackles, casting flickering light across the room, shadows dancing on the walls as if celebrating the quiet reunion of trust and love. You stroke her hair gently, feeling the softness beneath your fingertips, the faint scent of lavender lingering. Each touch is deliberate, yet spontaneous, a connection not programmed, not forced, but chosen. "You forgive me?" she murmurs, eyes closed. "Always," you whisper, voice steady. "For every moment, every secret, everything you couldn't control, it brought us here, to this." Her fingers tighten around yours, and a faint laugh escapes her lips, light and full of relief. "I don't deserve this," she says softly. "You do," you reply simply. "More than anyone else could, because love isn't about perfection. It's about being seen and being chosen, and I choose you, always." Hours pass unnoticed. The night deepens, and the mansion is quiet, save for the low hum of the fire and your gentle breathing together. Outside, the stars glitter, distant and eternal, like witnesses to this fragile human connection. You trace her name softly in your mind, imagining the years to come, Walks through the gardens, quiet mornings, laughter spilling across the rooms, shared secrets, and the steady rhythm of hearts intertwined. All the doubts, all the secrets, all the moments of hesitation, none of it matters anymore. What matters is this, the choice, the trust, the love that has grown, gentle and unyielding between you. And in the glow of firelight, the touch of her hand in yours, you know that you have found the rarest, truest thing, a love that survives, even flourishes, despite everything. Now, the mansion is quiet. The fire has dimmed to soft embers, casting a gentle glow across the familiar rooms. Outside, the night is still, the stars hanging patiently in the sky as if holding their breath. You lie together in that warmth, the world retreating to the edges of your mind, leaving only the comforting presence of her beside you. Each breath feels slower, softer, as if the air itself is encouraging calm. The memories of the day, the laughter, the quiet confessions, the simple touch of hands, wash over you like gentle waves, each one softer than the last. You imagine the gardens, bathed in moonlight, petals glistening with dew, and feel the ease of being somewhere safe, somewhere chosen. Her heartbeat is steady beneath your hand, a rhythmic reassurance that lulls the mind and quiets thought. The questions that once lingered, the fear, the secrets, the uncertainty fade into nothingness, replaced by the simple truth that love has a rhythm all its own, patient and unhurried. You breathe in, imagining the warmth of that connection stretching into the future, each moment a soft thread tying hearts together. The fire crackles one last time before fading completely. You feel the gentle weight of sleep pressing close, pulling the lids down softly. Her warmth remains steady and familiar, grounding you as your mind drifts. The mansion, the gardens, the laughter, and the quiet moments all fold gently into the night, carrying you toward rest. And as your breathing slows, as the world slips into silence, you know that this love, imperfect, chosen, real, remains. It holds you safe, cradling your dreams, whispering calm. Sleep now, letting the gentle rhythm of hearts in trust guide you into the quietest of nights.